Welcome to the FedLife podcast with Dan Sipe from Serving Those Who Serve. In this podcast, Dan draws from years of financial experience to help federal employees overcome challenges that every Fed can relate to. Join us for this journey as we reach, teach, and serve to help you make the right financial decisions. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to another Serving Those Who Serve podcast. Today, we are interviewing one of the partners and head of investment strategy, Thomas Lee, who's also a CFP. Tom, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Matt.
So, Tom, the goal today is for us to have an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better, to find out what makes you tick, not just professionally, but also personally. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your history on how you decided to work in the financial services industry?
Well, interestingly enough, I didn't really decide to work in the financial services industry. I kind of fell into it. I was, if you can believe it, at the Peabody Conservatory, and I was getting my master's degree in classical guitar performance. It was there that I discovered that I didn't have enough talent to make it. Simultaneously, I was also courting my now wife, Misu, who was getting her doctorate degree there. And she wasn't going to marry a starving musician. So I knew I needed to make money. And I interviewed at a lot of different industries. And I simply literally looked in the newspaper for an ad. And I interviewed at various insurance companies and wound up getting a job at FedLife. Literally, I was selling insurance for a couple of years, life insurance. And that's how I got my feet into the industry.
But you've stayed, right? So that was a while ago. What has made you just be such a student of this game and stay so interested?
That's a good question. So there came a point, and I think it was as I was leaving FedLife, I was there for about 2 years, where I was really deciding whether I wanted this to be a career. And once I made that decision, I really became obsessed with becoming the best financial advisor that I could be. And I wound up leaving FedLife for a couple of years, and they hired me back to be part of a pilot program for advanced estate planning. So that was a bit of an honor and accolade. And then from there, it just took off.
Let's talk about what you do now. So who do you work with and what is your specialty?
What types of clients do I work with?
Yeah.
I work with generally higher net worth individuals. I work with a lot of government employees. And it's hard not to in the Washington, D.C. area. I work with a lot of lawyers. It's hard not to in the Washington, D.C. area, right? There are more lawyers than people, supposedly, in Washington, D.C. And then I also do quite a bit of charitable strategy work. So that's something actually you've been involved with us in the past with. It's specifically charitable tax strategies, typically for people who are wealthy or higher net worth.
If you could wave a magic wand and say, this is my ideal client, how do you define that?
Let's see. The ideal client would be someone, I think, who would engage me intellectually, someone who is trusting. Right. In other words, I typically don't like working with clients who are very, very skeptical or overly skeptical. Short, challenging, absolutely. But once the light bulb goes on, I want a client who sort of trusts me from that point out.
How do you get introductions to the clients that you have now? I mean, what is the way that you acquire new clients?
Well, at this point, thankfully, it's only through prestige referral. So I like to say that it's a closed network. In other words, to get to me, you will have had to have worked with one of my clients. Now, I do work with some people, and this is almost randomly, for financial advisors who are working in Serving Those Who Serve, who are having difficulty with a case or just want me to bring me in because of my expertise.
How do you educate clients just overall? I mean, that's a huge aspect of who you are as trying to be the best financial advisor you can be. How do you educate your clients? What are your preferred methods?
That's a great question. And I'm glad you brought out that word educate, because I think if you could capture the financial planning process that I use, it would be education. right? So whether it comes from the insurance area, education on protecting your biggest risk. For example, the single biggest risk that we all face is actually the risk of being sued, right? Because there's no limit in terms of how much you could be sued for. So I educate people, for example, on getting an umbrella policy. When it comes to investing, we are firmly entrenched in academia in terms of how we approach our investing. And so that's very much education, educating people on their federal benefits and so forth. Thank you very much for using that word, because that really captures what we do.
Well, I think that's one of the things that makes you guys special is education is your foundation for client acquisition, for client retention, for just happy clients and doing a good job for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you do as a business in the community? Because I know you guys do stuff. Tell us what you do.
Sure. We've done various things. It can be anything from sponsoring different events to outright just giving money to various charities. And then we've done things like set up booths at a country fair, for example, for Youth for Tomorrow. And we give away candy, frisbees. We play rock, paper, scissors with the kids that come along to win prizes, things like that. It sort of runs the gamut that way.
What designations in advanced education do you have?
So personally, I have the Certified Financial Planner designation. The other designation that I have is the Accredited Investment Fiduciary. That's, I would say, even fewer financial advisors have the Accredited Investment Fiduciary. It is, the word fiduciary is the key word right there, in that AIFs are held to a fiduciary standard, which means we have to act in the best interest of our clients. And then the last designation I have is the Chartered Federal Employee Benefit Consultant designation, CHFEBC. It's a mouthful. Incredibly, only a handful of financial advisors in the DC area have that designation. And I personally think every financial advisor in the DC area should have it, because there's so many government employees who are here. Basically, what it means is that I am trained and equipped to talk about federal benefits and how it fits into someone's total financial picture.
You had said earlier that you are firmly entrenched in academia. Let's talk about your financial philosophy.
Okay, I'm glad you asked, and I could go on for hours and hours and hours about this. So how long should this response be?
Probably not hours, my friend, but I'd like for you to be descriptive, please.
All right. So when an economist wins the Nobel Prize in economics for anything that's related to personal finance, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. And in my mind, there have been 3 major Nobel Prizes in economics that specifically relate to personal finance. Because remember, most of the time it has nothing to do with personal finance, like climate change, economics of climate change, game theory, microfinance, things like that. But the 1990 Nobel Prize in economics was awarded to Harry Markowitz, who basically laid out a structure for diversification. And not diversification like, well, I'm just not going to put all my eggs in one basket, but specific guidelines for how you should diversify a portfolio. And that there are places where you can get a higher return with less risk. Okay, now I don't want to just sort of blithely pass that over. Higher return with less risk. If we think about it, higher return, higher risk, lower return, lower risk. Well, Markowitz proved that there are situations where you can get a higher return with less risk. And that's why his diversification principles have been called the only free lunch that exists in finance. Then Daniel Kahneman, 2002 Nobel Prize in economics, talked about the psychology of investing, essentially that we're prone to screw up investing. We're hardwired to screw up investing and make mistakes. And then Eugene Fama, 2013 Nobel Prize winner in economics. Well, he's been called the father of modern finance and maybe the most respected financial economist in the country. And he laid out something called the efficient markets hypothesis, which is the underpinning for index funds, which has really sort of taken the industry by storm. He also laid out something called the 3-factor model in 1992, and it has since, I believe, been the most cited paper in all of finance. It's certainly pretty close to the top.
Okay, that didn't take it. I mean, I know you could keep going, but that was really clear and succinct, man. Well done, well done.
Good. Well, I've laid it out enough times.
It sounds like you've talked about that a few times, Tom.
Sure, yes, I do.
Absolutely. Okay, now we're going to switch gears and find out a little bit more about you as a human. So when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
So I love music. So as I mentioned before, I dropped out of music school, and that was a rough time in my life. But looking back, I wouldn't trade it for the world because, I literally listen to music on a different level than most people. I actually double majored my undergraduate education in music and English, and then again, master's degree towards music at the Peabody Conservatory. But yeah, I can appreciate music on a different level. I was watching a special with Itzhak Perlman. His wife is also a musician, and they were driving in the car listening to an old Marian Anderson gospel recording. And the two of them were so moved that they had to pull over. They were literally in tears because they were so moved. And this is the recording from about 1930s or something like that. I was just thinking to myself, they're on a different plane in terms of understanding the music, but something as simple as sort of a gospel song communicated to them on such a raw level. It's a gift, and I'll have it as long as I can hear.
Who's your hero?
My hero. That's got to be Joe Gibbs. But you probably want to know why. So
I do want to know why.
All right. So Joe Gibbs, if you don't know, actually, if this is being broadcast in the D.C. area, of course you know who he is. But the coach of the Washington Redskins, 3 Super Bowl championships. Here's a man who really lives his life with integrity. And integrity is just an overused word. But he was always someone who took responsibility when things didn't turn out well and gave credit when things did turn out well. So that's just a great lesson right there. Just a great man overall. I can tell kind of a funny story. You want to hear it, or do we have enough time?
Yeah, we have time. Go ahead. Okay,
so this is how much of a hero he is. When I was 16 years old, I was in a very serious car accident. I was the front passenger seat. The car literally flipped into a creek, and I had hit my head. And to this day, I still have about an hour to 90-minute memory gap. Like, I really don't remember. I remember right before the accident. And then the next thing I remember was being in a house. The EMTs were there, and they're asking me questions. And they're like, do you know what your name is? And I'm like, no, I don't know. Do you know what date it is? And I'm like, I'm not so sure. Well, do you know who won the Super Bowl? I said, sure, Joe Gibbs. It's the Redskins, right? So I really owe Joe Gibbs the restoration of my mental facility, I think is what it comes down to.
That is absolutely fantastic.
Yep.
If you had all of the money in the world you ever needed, what would you do?
Wow. I've actually thought about that before. I would actually give it all away. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I think, studies have shown that people who win the lottery, for example, it evaporates. And I think that money that you don't earn through hard work is money that frequently just gets frittered away. It changes your values on things. So yeah, I would absolutely give it away. And I'd love to be challenged someday by that.
I hope I am the person who gets to challenge you that with Tom. That would be awesome.
Nice.
Who's your favorite person in history and why?
Favorite person in history? Well, that's got to be Jesus. Beyond the religious ramifications, and I am a Christian, but beyond that, he's an example of humility, an example of self-sacrifice. I think many people, even outside who are non-Christians, believe him to be the wisest man who ever lived.
It's interesting that you say that, because my next question really feeds into that. When you think of the word success, how do you define success, and what does that mean to you?
So just right off the cuff, I think success is being able to improve people's lives in a tangible way and feeling good about it. In other words, you didn't do it you did it by working hard. You did it by learning experience. You did it by caring rather than doing it through dishonest means. So yeah, I guess I like that. I like that, to be able to help improve as many people's lives as possible and then feeling good about it. doing it the right way.
What is the one thing that you recommend most to family, friends, or clients? Now, this can be a book, it can be an album, it can be a TED Talk. What do you recommend?
What do I recommend to friends, clients?
Yeah, family, friends, or clients. Yeah.
Okay, so can I phrase it in terms of an investment strategy, or?
You can any way you want, dude. Absolutely.
So like I run in circles where people either they don't want to do business with me. Let's say they're friends, for example. I'm in a social setting, but then they ask me, what should I do? Mm-hmm. What should I do with my 401k plan? What I'd recommend is a target date plan. So it can be basically you invest in a retirement fund whose year matches most closely with your retirement year, the year that you expect to retire. You put your money in that fund and you add money for the rest of your career, and then you do not look at your statements. That's the advice I give.
Sure.
Because the biggest mistakes that you can make investing are when you look at your statements. Mm-hmm. And that can mean positive or negative. Like when it's negative, you want to sell. When it's positive, you want to buy more. And frequently, both of those are mistakes.
I thought you were going to say live at Massey Hall, which was the number one thing you recommended to me when we first met, which, by the way, I was just listening to with my family. And once again, just was like, oh, I remember who introduced me to this. Name one thing that most people don't know about you, Tom.
The one thing that most people don't know about me, a lot of people know about me now, right? Is that I dropped out of music school. From the Peabody Conservatory. I mean, that was my dream. I had long hair past my shoulders. I was kind of a hippie and played classical guitar, and that was my dream. It's funny about dreams because I don't dream about being a musician anymore. Mm-hmm. But I certainly did back then.
What is your mantra, motto, or something you say to keep yourself focused and on track when things go awry?
So the one that I've been using recently is that when you run into obstacles, when you're having a bad day, and they always happen to us, that's the time you should double down on gratitude and literally take some time and to think of all the things that you're grateful for, whether it's your family, your job. And it can be as simple as just living in this country. Do I have a little time to expand on this?
Absolutely.
More? Because I heard this great story.
Sure.
This guy, I forgot who it was. He was a business owner. He sold his business for something like $100 million. And he was featured in a magazine. And they asked him, to what do you attribute your success? And he said, well, that's got to be changing an O to an E. Changing the letter O to the letter E. So, what does that mean? Well, he said, when I was a kid, I used to have to take out the trash. And so my mother said, you need to take out the trash. And so I said, oh, do I got to take out the trash again? Do I got to take out the trash? And she said, don't ever say that again. You get to take out the trash. But what does that mean? So you change the O to an E. This fellow's mother said, look, if you were just about in any other country in the world, trash would be a problem. Okay, it would be, there'd be disease, it would smell, it would be an ordeal that you probably have to deal with every day. Whereas all you need to do is once a week, you get to take the trash out to the curb, and they take it away, trash person, and they bury it. They put it someplace where it's not a problem anymore. So just on a very basic level, reflecting on gratitude like that.
What's your proudest achievement?
Proudest achievement? Wow, that's a stumper. There are, I guess, career achievements. Can I list more than one?
Absolutely. And in fact, I'd like it if you did, please.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm very proud that my daughter got into my alma mater. Yay! Yeah, so she's going to Amherst College, which is where I went. And the cool thing is, assuming she graduates on time, we'll be able to go to reunions together once every 5 years. She'll be, again, if she graduates on time, it'll be exactly 30 years after I did. And then the proudest achievement was, and Matt, you may be surprised to hear this because this is an ongoing thing, but launching our give strategies, really getting into charitable strategies. We have a goal of redirecting $1 billion to charity through charitable tax strategies. We're trying to find charitable people out there for whom this is appropriate, and we can help them navigate this. It can be kind of tricky waters in terms of maximizing charitable benefits when it comes to financial strategies.
If someone were to ask you who should listen to this podcast, how would you answer that question?
I think almost everyone should listen to the podcast. I mean, certain elements of it for sure. I mean, the investment part, in terms of the 3 Nobel Prizes, there is just a sea of information out there when it comes to investments and financial strategies. How do you sort through it all? Most of it is just rubbish, and most of it honestly can hurt you, right? How do you sift through it all? And I think the organizing principle is investing based on those 3 investment strategies. It can be reduced down to simple concepts, but I think if everyone were to apply those principles to their financial lives, they would be improved. I can say that without question.
Yeah. Well, Tom, thank you very much for letting our audience get to know you a little bit better personally and professionally.
Well, it's actually been fun, and it's been a pleasure.
Well, make sure that you stay tuned to all of the podcasts that are going to be coming out, because we're going to be putting a couple of these out every single solitary month. And if you do know anybody who should hear the information that you hear on these podcasts, make sure you click that share button, because it's super easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. So for everybody at Serving Those Who Serve, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Thank you for listening to the FedLife podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Serving Those Who Serve or Raymond James. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors Incorporated. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services.
Neither Raymond James Financial Services nor any Raymond James financial advisor renders advice on tax issues. These matters should be discussed with the appropriate professional. Investing involves risk, and you may incur a profit or loss regardless of strategy selected, including diversification and asset allocation.